This time, we'll call to order the Committee of the Whole meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer, he's in the building. Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Klicka.
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
And Chairman Eilert.
Here. We do have a quorum present. The purpose of today's Committee of the Whole is to review the review list. And if we reach that point, we can make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for a decision point in order to determine a budget to be published for public hearing. Am I correct? Perhaps you want to expand on that.
Yes, Chairman and Commissioners, thank you. Yes, you've heard from us for the last month, and thank you for your time and commitment and interest to be able to spend this number of days with you to present our recommended budget and the details from the departments to share that with you, with their recommendations. We are looking for direction, as the Chairman said, for you today, with the revisit list being the focus. There are 3 items that got 2 votes or more from commissioners, so we'll focus on those to begin with. After we finish the revisit list, we do want to highlight the taxing district ready for publication. So with that, I'll turn it over to Scott Neufeld.
Thank you. I think Robin has passed out not only the agenda, but the summarized or totaled up revisit list. Basically, what we have is it is sorted by number of commissioners that requested that we consider focusing or reviewing certain items, and so it's in descending order. And so it's important to note that everything that received mention is on the first page. However, the list has not been shortened, and that's part of the handling things properly. That this is all of the original revisit list is on. So as you look at pages 2, 3, and 4, those are the remaining items that were on the list. The other thing I would note is that we always leave the opportunity for board members to add items that aren't on the list. So the list is consisted of basically changes to the budget in the form of CIP requests and requests for additional resources. And so whether they're funded or not, they're on the list to start with. And so if you look at the column that says funded on the first page there, and if you get down to where it's blank, that is the beginning of some items that were added by a commissioner that were not on the original list. So basically, we have in totality, we have an item where 4 commissioners wanted to discuss. That's the Sheriff's Investigative Task Force that's currently partially funded. And then we have a couple more where 2 commissioners want to discuss them. After that, we have quite a number that 1 wanted to discuss. And then below that, we have a number of items that weren't on the original list that a commissioner added for potential discussion topics. So at this point, unless there's questions about those, and I did talk with that commissioner, so I know a little bit on some of these items, what they mean, I'll turn it back over to the chair for the board to discuss to what extent we want to review this and how we want to handle things.
Well, my suggestion would be that we proceed as outlined, that we take the revisits for the general fund and then the parks and then the library in that order. And let's start with any item on the general fund that has 2 or more commissioners who wanted to revisit. Let's start there. Then we'll proceed on the same basis to parks and library separately. Where there's only 1 commissioner who wants an item considered, my suggestion would be that when we started, we needed 2 or more. And unless the body wants to prolong discussion, why we'll focus on those that have two or more requests. Mr. Ashcraft?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I know this will be to your utter surprise, but I think, the one commissioner on many of these, and I would just offer that this is our time to deliberate and talk about strategies and funding, and I would like the opportunity to at least make an appeal on a few of these items, because I think they have a significant impact, or could have a significant impact on how we do government and the cost of government. So having said that, if I fail to get support, then I will respect the process.
Okay. All right, well, let's begin with those that have two or more on the general fund. Mr. Allen.
I just have a procedure question. Maybe you'd start with the first one on the sheriff. I think I sensed some support to move that from 3 to 4 individuals to proceed. Would we make a motion to do that and actually take a vote?
I think first we should probably clarify, because that is a partially funded FT request that has 7 FTEs, I don't know what the intent was. I know that several board members during the budget hearing with the sheriff discussed adding a position, and so Robin has a little bit of information to help clarify that discussion.
Well, but if there's a decision, we need to take a motion to vote.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Right, and all I mean by that is we need to make sure that the clarity of why people put that on there. I'm not sure everybody was thinking one more.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, let's begin with the general fund.
Yeah, I don't have the detail for me. So
We need Robin's sheet.
she's handing it to everybody, but I guess we could just call Cal up. Okay, so right now, with the request, you can see that there's 3 deputies that have been funded, 2 that have not been funded, a lieutenant that has not been funded, and a sergeant that has not been funded. And so I had heard some discussion that there was a lot of support to add one of the positions. I can't remember if it was the sergeant or lieutenant based on the conversation. However, I'm not sure that of all 4 commissioners, there might have been intent to add more than one. So that's really kind of where I wanted to frame it and let the board chime in with their intent on this.
Well, I'll start. I think I made this comment at the time the sheriff made the presentation that I would support the staff's recommendation for 3 personnel, but wanted to add 1 additional for supervisor. And I don't know whether that's a lieutenant or a sergeant, but that there be 1 additional supervisor added, which would bring the total to 4.
The sheriff just indicated that would be the lieutenant in his estimation.
Okay. Other comments, Mr. Ostrowski?
It's my understanding that the sheriff was going to repurpose 2 of his officers as well. Okay, I'm getting a nod from Sheriff Hayden over there, so thank you. That was my...
Can we get a clarification on this, just so we're all on the same page? What was the original request? What was the staff recommendation? And then adding the 1, I've even gotten confused on how many were originally requested versus staff recommendation.
So this has contractual commodities, but if you look at the first 4 lines, that is the staffing request. And so that first line that says 2019 funded was what's in the recommended budget. So that's the 3 deputies, and so that is currently in the budget. And then there's an additional 2 deputies that I believe are the ones the sheriff has indicated he can repurpose. That leaves the lieutenant and the sergeant, and the discussion had been around adding a supervisor, which the sheriff is indicating would be that lieutenant position. So the total request was the first 4 lines of 7 positions, and 3 are currently in.
I would like to also clarify, we have other sheriff positions. This is particular to the investigative task force. We do have other sheriff positions that we added. That may be confusing you as also because we had a total of, I think, four other positions for the sheriff's department, crime lab, and a mental health co-responder that's a mental health and sheriff position. So there are other positions outside of this, but we're focusing this discussion on the amount that we funded for the investigative task force.
But to the specific question, the original request for the investigative section was 7.
Right.
And the county manager's report funded 3 of those. The suggestion is that we fund 1 additional for supervisory position, and that then 2 other personnel can be repurposed, bringing it up to a total of 7. Is that right? Okay.
6.
6.
1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1.
And that conversation has occurred between budget, county manager's office, and the sheriff, and asking the sheriff, you're good at this request funding level and for FTs? Okay, thank you very much.
I believe by good, he means he wants the lieutenant.
Gotcha.
It's his choice. Mr. Ashcraft.
So clarify then, this additional staffing has a cost. What's the source of these funds? Will we be making adjustments from other recommended expenditures that you've had this time, or taking it out of reserves, or reducing the mill decrease, or increasing the mill reduction, or whatever, however you describe that?
The strategy we were going to cover a little bit later when we get to the mill levy by taxing districts, but our preliminary indicators from Paul is that we set more than enough aside to cover valuation changes with IRBs, et cetera. We do not have final numbers from Paul, but we think when we get into June that there's going to be a little bit of cushion from where we started. Again, we set aside 0.275, and we also built in an assumption for appeals that was larger than last year and carried the IRB number from last year. And so based on preliminary numbers that Paul has not checked, and we're not really ready to give out any kind of exact numbers, we think we'll have a small cushion which would allow us to absorb this position within our targeted rollback of 0.25
But
mils.
specifically, the money would come out of the general fund.
Yes, but I believe Commissioner Ashcraft was speaking, how will we keep the budget in balance?
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Other questions?
I do have one more question. I want to make sure. The additional lieutenant,
yes.
6 plus 1, or total of 7, or
So what
Is that-
if you look at this worksheet, the first 3 are in as new positions. We would add the lieutenant as another new position, and so that would carry over. And then the sheriff has indicated that he can repurpose 2 deputies. So what that means is the new positions in the budget will be 4. The FTEs on the task force will be 6 because it will use 2 existing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do I hear a motion? Mr. Allen.
I would move that we fund the lieutenant for the sheriff investigating task force at an estimated amount of $132,686.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded to approve.
Can I
the
interject
motion.
real quick? We'll make slight adjustments for laptops and those kinds of things to accommodate the other FTEs. So just, et cetera. I apologize. I should have said that sooner.
The motion before us is to approve the additional supervisory position for the investigative task force. Questions or comments? Mr. Brown.
Just a point of clarification, but in any event, the position is funded.
Yes.
Even if we need to pull some small amount from reserves to cover it, it will be funded.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka?
Yeah, aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Is there another item in the general fund?
Yes, the next one is the Veterans Treatment Court Coordinator. This is within the district court operation, It is an existing position that the funding is scheduled to run out approximately three-quarters of the way through the year. Robin, I believe that amount was about $20,000? About $15,000. And I would note that the full-year impact in '20 would be then approximately $60,000. And so we had two commissioners that wanted to revisit that, and so that's really the gist of it.
Okay. Don't know who made those marks, but Mr. Allen?
Yes, and attending one of these functions, I think it's a very important program for the county to participate in, and I did have a brief conversation this morning with our acting county manager, and Penny, I think you had a strategy maybe that we could come up to fund this with.
Yes, I would, I talked to Maury, so I'm going to make sure with him that this is accurate, that with the $15,000 that's needed for 19, that department is able to absorb that, that we would see if there's any other funding sources that come forward and address that in the 20 budget, I believe is a recommendation. Is that correct, Maury?
That's correct.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, if you had more, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, based on that, do we still need a motion if we wanted to do that, or?
I think we could cover it if you are comfortable with that.
Okay.
The only thing that I would add is as long as we know going forward that you want this position in the future for 2020 funded with county support.
I think we address it then.
That's the decision to be made in 2020.
20, okay.
So, Mr. Osterhaus.
I'm not sure who exactly to direct this to on staff, but which grant is it going away? Is that a state or a federal or a?
I believe that's a federal grant.
Okay. And that we're for sure that it's not coming back and it's just gone away, or?
No, my understanding is we're not completely convinced of that. All likelihood, again, the current grant will end three-quarters of the way through the year. Additional grant funding is being sought, so there is some potential that we could find grant funding to pick it up. But if not, again, District Court believe they can absorb this 3-month period in their existing budget. So again, if we can't secure grant funding in any other form, it may likely be back before you next year for consideration.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, certainly the object of the Veterans Treatment Court is to keep folks out of the judicial system.
Yeah.
Yes.
Long-term, and so it seems to me like if someone is not, if the coordinator position has a negative impact on the program, then we'll spend a lot more money somewhere else, quite frankly. So, but let's do have a motion because that is addition to the recommended. Mr. Allen.
I'd move to fund one person for the Veterans Treatment Court Coordinator.
Second.
Excuse me,
We have a question over here.
Yeah, the information we were attempting to portray is it's not needed.
Doesn't impact this year's budget.
Yeah, that they can absorb this 3-month period.
But we should authorize the additional position.
it's an existing position.
Well,
Or
we should authorize the additional 1 quarter of payment.
1 quarter.
That's fine.
Right.
That would work.
Right.
No, that's fine.
Is that the motion?
Yes.
Maury, just go with the support, would you, please?
All right, the motion has been made and seconded to authorize the additional 1 quarter position for the Veterans Treatment Court. Any further questions or discussion?
Chairman,
Yes.
I see the look on Mr. Thompson's face, and I'm looking for some clarification. I think he is, I'm sensing he has something to say.
Yeah, again, apparently I'm not doing a good job of portraying the conversation with the district court. They're saying they do not need this money at this time, that they have additional capability within their existing budget to fund this.
We're not authorizing the funding, we're authorizing the position.
And
The
it's an
position's
existing
already
position, you don't even need to do that. There's no action needed by this body on this item.
I did not understand that.
Okay. They've got the
Want to show
position.
support, you can show support.
Well, let's not make it too complicated. If you're satisfied with that, that's fine.
Yes.
But the grant funding runs out,
Right.
and we need to authorize a quarter position in order to facilitate the program.
And the district court is saying we have the position and we've got the dollars to cover it for that last quarter. So we don't really need you to do anything on this item.
If that's a
Yes.
ruling by the judge,
Yeah.
then we'll accept that.
Yeah.
So,
And again, as Commissioner Brown's, I think, attempting to say, if they cannot secure grant funding, it will likely be back before you for consideration next year.
for next year. All right.
Withdraw the motion.
Withdraw
All the
second.
motion. We're okay. Next item.
Okay, the next item is a CIP for facilities regarding building and site signage improvements. And I believe Joe put together some information, and I think he sent out an email, but here's a hard copy of it. I think that's what Robin is passing out. So Joe is here, and Brad Reinhardt from Facilities are here as far as discussing this. I think the intent on this was to review the progress and the state of things in terms of updating our signage.
So in the top half, you'll see a 3-year plan that staff discussed during the budget process. The first year did not get included in the 2019 budget. I understand that there's a desire, at least from 2 commissioners, to accelerate this, so there's various options. One is you could fund the first year and start the 3-year, or if you wanted to, you could take the total of roughly 500,000 needs and do it over 2 years. But those are the type of options that we would look for your direction on. And Parks and Rec is included in the bottom half. Our understanding is that they've included this in a multi-year plan, and that is funded within their budget. So really, we're looking for direction on the county buildings signage.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Well, those who,
Mr. Chairman.
yes, Mr. Clickham?
I wasn't here to express my support to it last week when it was brought up, but I'm probably very much strong advocate. It's time to get beyond this program and get it taken care of versus continuing to have it just linger. So, for whatever, Commissioner Allen, I think you're the one who initiated this deal, so whatever we can do to move it.
Could you explain that, Mr. Allen?
Yes, thank you, and I clearly understand budget constraints, and again, had a conversation with Penny on this item also, and I'm open to, based on our constraints, as long as we have a plan to implement this and get it finished within a reasonable time frame. I think there's an option maybe to delay it a year and then do it possibly in a 2-year period. Some other options were brought forward. Frankly, I was waiting to see what other budget impacts were made this morning to see if this still would be a priority. But we've had our logo for a few years, and in my opinion, I see the results of that. I see the vehicles, and again, trying to build one consistent image for the county. And if we can incrementally address some of these and get going on it, and I do appreciate the support of Park and Recreation on that. So I'd like to move forward, but I'm open. I don't want to, frankly, take away for something that may be a bigger priority.
So this is directed at logos and
Building
branding.
signs.
Branding.
Yes,
Branding, yeah.
consistently through the county buildings.
Yes. We've done a lot of it, as you know, but this is we've got a lot of buildings across the county, so this would be a plan to do it. And we have a desire to do it as well. We were trying to balance phasing with the desire to do it. And so if the direction would be to fund the first year and do the 3-year plan or even a 2-year plan, we could certainly do whichever option you choose.
So it'd be almost $200,000 for 19?
For the first year if we did a 3-year plan, yes.
And we would probably
uh,
use reserves for that since it's a one-time.
The option is to continue our process as we have in the past?
Well, what's funded, there isn't the first year funded of the 3-year plan of what's left for 2019. We would have to consider it in a later budget if you went with our original recommendation. However, we are certainly more than willing to look at an option of funding either the first year of a 3-year or accelerate it even further. But as Robin said, we would recommend using reserves because it is a one-time funding source.
And I did look at the impact of this on our reserve level for the end of 2019, and it adjusted by like 0.01%. So we would still be above that estimated 25% minimum amount that we're trying to hit.
Well, quite frankly, I'm not opposed to continuing to emphasize when we can the logo, but I'm not sure I'm ready to support an additional $200,000 to the budget specifically for that purpose, if that's where it's going.
Two questions.
All of these that we have listed, all of them currently have signs now. None of these buildings are without a sign.
Correct. It's to switch it over to the new
So
branding. Is
this would
that
just
correct,
all
Joe?
be switching to the new logo.
Yes.
And then, so this, is there anyone who's not okay with this plan as submitted, or is there a real strong desire to move faster than that? Because that seems fine to me to move. I know it's not.
Well, again, to clarify, it's a 3-year plan, but the
Yeah.
first year did not get submitted. So it actually would be.
2021 and 22.
2021, 22.
Yeah.
Yeah, could you go back to the photographs? Put the photographs back up. I'm in favor of it. I think there's nothing better looking than the Johnson County First with our logo, and I think it brings some consistency to all of our buildings, and I think there are a number of buildings that we have around the county that people don't really realize what goes on in there, and I think the more we progress or project in our progress with new signage is the best thing we can do. I'm in favor of it.
Okay. Other comments, Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman and Mr. Allen, as you know, I'm supportive of the rebranding initiative. I think it makes a lot of sense long-term, but with the pressures that I hear from taxpayers that talk about the increases in the spending that we have, this to me is a nice to have, and to accelerate spending, I struggle with that. I think in normal course, as signs need to be replaced or upgraded, that does make sense, but to go out of our way to accelerate it, I just don't find that as a compelling reason.
Okay. Other comments, Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. I would echo Commissioner Ashcraft's comments, and in the comments that I hear from taxpayers and constituents about what we spend our money on and our priorities in that. I have concerns about putting another $200,000 at this time into the rebranding effort. I am, to be clear, completely supportive of the rebranding effort, but swallowing a $200,000 pill at this time seems, I'm not opposed to some, but $200,000 seems excessive given the comments that I have shared from this seat before from constituents about where we are in terms of expenditures at the county, and this is a nice to have. I don't think it's an emergency or an overriding priority to do all of these right now. I'd be interested in a conversation about some, maybe this administration building. I think from that perspective, this building should be leading where we are in the county with branding and with everything that happens outside of here. So maybe a portion of this, but all of it at $200,000 seems disproportionate given the feedback I get. Thank you.
Mr. Allen?
And again, I appreciate the comments from both sides, and that's why I was willing on the opening statement. I frankly knew it's a budget impact, and maybe as a compromise, maybe to extend this possibly over a 4-year period of time, and the impact would be approximately $125,000, if I'm correct on that, Scott. If it was $500,000 total, Penny?
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and understand there's always budget priorities and everything else, but as we move forward, we're funding the development of a mobile app, and I think all these things play in together, and the more we have that synergy of everybody on the same playing field, I'd like to move forward. I understand the budget constraints, but I'd make a motion to approve this over a 4-year period of time for $125,000 a year.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to authorize $125,000 a year over a 4-year period of time for branding,
Beginning in
2019.
with $125,000 in 19's budget.
So which of these would be done versus which ones wouldn't be, since that's 197 versus 125?
I'll look to Joe or facilities to answer that. Is Brad here?
Brad?
Quick math.
Brad Reinhardt with Facilities. We'll have to check the detail behind this to see which ones, but certainly up on the PowerPoint slide here is kind of considerations we would take into account on replacing signs. Are they effective? Are they in disrepair? Is it a major trafficked building like the administration building? So if acceptable, I could follow up with you on some greater detail of what we would recommend the 125 be spent on.
Well, I guess my question centers more on, is that 125 going to cover 3 signs? Is it going to cover 4? Is it going to get all 5 of these? We're reducing the number greatly, almost by half, so are we putting up 2 signs? Would we be able to put up 2 with that number, or?
Well, and the original request was 5 locations, and on the spreadsheet there were 4 at the administration building, 4 at Northeast office, 3 at Lanesfield Museum, Multi-Service Center at 2, and MedAct 1. So we would shuffle that to see, well, how many of these sites can we complete? So it'd be a site. So a couple of these sites would probably roll off and be pushed to out years, but we'd prioritize.
So we'd really.
So I don't have any specific for it. It can't.
Sure, I know.
For you.
It just seems to me like we'd be catching 2 buildings with this instead of the whole, or maybe the MedAct.
I think we could
Possibly.
catch administration Northeast. Those are certainly major main buildings that might be first on the list.
I'm not in favor of the motion. I think we can address the signage as needed. We have included in this budget, 4 or 5 employees for DTI. A couple of those are specifically assigned to increase the county's awareness to those who access information online. I think that's important, so I will not support the motion that's before us. Mr. Ashcraft.
Mr. Chairman, I agree with you.
We'll make note of that.
Date and time.
I knew you would not miss the opportunity to make that comment, but I think you make a fair point.
Okay, any question about the motion? All right, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer? Aye. Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka?
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
No.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
No?
Commissioner Brown?
No.
And Chairman Eilert?
No. Motion did not receive a majority of votes. All right, next item. I had 4-3, is that right, clerk? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, at this point, that is the list of items that received a tally of 2 or more. You have the sheet before you, so if we want to move.
Let's go to the next part.
For the agenda. Okay. You want to do parks first?
Mr. Chairman, I will agree with the process. I do offer objections. My challenge is with this incremental budgeting approach. I understand.
Go ahead. Go ahead. If we're talking about the general fund item.
Yeah, and not being able to address the systemic use of resources for positions that we have no performance indicators, and we've added almost 90 positions over the last 5 years, and that information has not been forthcoming. The budget information has been found wanting, lacking, and several suggestions in terms of expenditures we have for programs have not been addressed. One in particular, Mr. Chairman, that I would like to raise as a potential discussion point is that has to do with salaries. We're offering a 3% increase. We call it a merit increase. I see that more as a raise rather than tied to specific performance. There's not been any reporting of that and the impact that it has. And so I wanted to offer that we reduce that to 2.5%. indicating a $800,000 savings, and then throw that into, assign that to tax relief to help increase the mill levy. But as a carrot, I would offer that what we could also do is increase that potential salary bonus for the coming year by 1% if staff is able to find that 1% savings in existing budgets. So I offer that as a discussion point. I know it's an effort that has not been generally accepted by staff, but I would offer that as an opportunity for us to address the concerns that our residents have expressed about the value for our taxes, and a way to recognize that we have a lot of resource and capacity and ability of staff, and challenge them to help us reduce costs, and at the same time maybe actually make a little bit extra money this coming year.
Sure. Okay. Well, perhaps mentioning employee increase in the last 5 years, as I recall, a good number of those were in public safety, the sheriff's office over the last 5 years. Currently, we have a new library that's expected to open. We've had the Monticello branch, which is expected to open, requiring new positions. And we also have park openings requiring new positions in order to facilitate those activities. Ms. Postoke-Ferguson, maybe you could, this would be an opportunity to just share with us the information that you and your leadership and the budget team goes through in determining what positions are to be recommended in your budget.
Yes, we go through quite a process. I would like to also add some things about how we do merit and based on performance as well. The process is pretty extensive, and it takes several months for us to work through the process. But there are teams made up of departments, representatives from several departments that look at positions, that give us recommendations. There are teams that look at the CIP. Each department does submit their proposal to the budget office, so it gets scrutinized by those various teams as well as the budget office and the budget analysts. And then the managers and the budget office go through an extensive review listening to those multi-departmental teams and their recommendations. We do factor in the desires from the board of the strategic priorities. We do factor in what the impacts are. There are some performance measures built throughout that. It may not be as robust in all areas, but that is part of the consideration and the impacts to service. We look at the financial stability and what we can continue to do. A couple of other points I'd like to add is we do have a merit system. We do have a pay for performance, and departments how they implement that is different because we have a lot of different services, but there is a process to do it based on performance. We don't typically report personnel items to the board as far as those details, but I will say some results that you all have seen is the citizen survey. You've seen the number of national and regional awards that we get. And we also do have a bonus program as part of our system internally. And we are trying some new things to add to some of that focus in the coming year as well. So also, again, the part of our recommendation for the 3% merit is also recognizing that there's a tight labor pool and that we want to retain our place in the market. Preliminary discussions with the cities in Johnson County as they're looking at 3+% increases, and so we want to stay close to the market with that as well.
Okay. Mr. Klicka, did you have a...
Mr. Chairman, I think in the past few years, I've had some various questions relative to the compensation and some of the benefits down the line. I'm a little bit concerned that we raise this right now at the last minute, but I think with the appointment of a new permanent county manager here in the next months here, I would like to just ask that the compensation packages and the flexibilities and the steps and a number of the mechanisms that we have in place, as well as the benefits packages, be kind of reviewed and studied in preparation of the next round or somewhere even in the middle of the year or wherever. I think that's got to take a little bit of consideration of where we are today, where we want to get to in the future as an organization, and make sure that we're nimble enough to wrestle through some of this stuff as we go into the next years.
Yes, Mr. Allen.
Just a quick follow-up comment. Most of the cities I'm following where I picked up budget projections on salary increases, frankly, I haven't seen one less than 4%.
There's several that are 4.
So the ones I've been tracking are 4%. And again, I think you have to be competitive. And if I understand correctly, there may be an increase for employees' health insurance costs next year. I don't know what factor, we have a dollar amount to assign to that yet, but I know that erosion on that also affects. But this 3% projection, and I don't know what those cities will end up doing, but as of now, we seem to be on the lower end, frankly.
Yes, I think the comment about reviewing salary and compensation, et cetera, if we want to do that at the staff level and share information with the commissioners for our knowledge, for our benefit, I'm not sure I want to go out and hire a compensation study.
I'm not advocating that.
I've been through that 2 or 3 times, and the answer always come back, you need to pay more. So I think we can probably.
Mr. Chairman, I think that's something that should be done. I think in-house I would agree with you, but I think it's something that needs to be kind of evaluated on an ongoing basis.
I think for the commissioners' information, yes, good thought. So, Mr. Ashcraft or Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I happen to agree with Commissioner Ashcraft's philosophy on this about turning back inward and asking staff to help all of us find places where efficiencies can be brought out. I'm not drawing a hard line at this budget for that. I'm not advocating that at this moment, but I would like to be thinking about that going forward. I like that strategy. I understand the need to be competitive, but I would also submit that while our cities and other competing governments for our resources, for our staff, our human resources, certainly are great places to work, Johnson County is also a great place to work. And I think that what we provide in terms of workplace, in terms of vehicles, in terms of benefits, makes us ultimately competitive, and that it is not necessarily all about money all the time. And so I would be generally supportive looking forward of what Commissioner Ashcraft has brought forward here.
Chairman, I would like to make a comment on that because I forgot to say something, and Commissioner Brown, something that both you and Commissioner Ashcraft said that I do agree with is that we do really look at efficiencies. There are some bonus programs that we do have right now that do acknowledge those. It's not just about efficiencies, it's also about effectiveness and leadership and teamwork, but that result in our residents being more satisfied with our local government. So please don't take away from this that we don't acknowledge efficiencies or reward that through the performance merit system that we have now. Could we enhance it? Yes. And we are doing I've spoken with most of you individually about a program that we are adding to our bonus program that we are starting this season, and that will be done within budget. So we are continuing to look at that and find it very important. Thank you.
You know, I would go back to what was mentioned earlier. I think 14 or 15 of our departments or agencies were recognized for high performance last year, regional and national level. And I think that says a lot about the overall performance of our employees. So, Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of points. I don't doubt the performance of our employees. I think they are dedicated and have the best of intents and carry out their duties responsibly. starting with the acting county manager. But when I do see the results from the citizen survey showing a significant decrease in the perception of the value they receive for county taxes, it does give me pause, and I do take somewhat of an exception. I've raised this issue about performance and accountability and reviewing that material year after year, and I've done it during this budget process, so it is not new. It is a concern, an ongoing concern of mine, and there are glimmers, there are exceptions that do have what I would say robust attempts to identify performance opportunities and act upon them. Tim DeWeese is not in the audience, so I would call him out if he was. I think he and Tanner Fortney and in that group in particular, and there are others. So I recognize that, but the fundamental flaw is that we have a revenue-based budgeting system, and we are always incrementally trying to spend every dollar rather than going at the core of how we do business. And Mr. Brown said it much better than I did. Thank you for that, Mr. Brown, because I think if we can turn the energy of our employees to looking at savings as well as maintaining or improving performance, we could come up with easily a 1% savings that would benefit our taxpayers directly and benefit our employees directly, rather than handicapping ourselves with the traditional what we call merit increase. And I will point out, I have shared this with the Commission and with staff. Back in May of 2017, Governing Magazine had a little article called "The Big Little Lies," and one of them that they list out: merit pay is based on merit. Truth is that many states and localities, merit pay is just a euphemism for a raise. When the vast majority of employees get the merit pay increase, which is often the case, the likelihood that it doesn't indicate that the raise was necessarily merited by superior work. So the point is, if everybody's getting a piece of it, it's really not focusing on rewarding true merit. It's rewarding longevity, and longevity has a value. But when our residents are saying the value they receive for tax support is going down, it's a concern of mine. So,
okay. Well, do I hear a motion on this item? All right, there's no motion to be made, so we'll go on to the next item.
Okay, I believe that the chair mentioned starting with the Park and Recreation Taxing District. One of the things that, Robin, do you want to maybe go ahead and pass out that graph? One of the things that the chair has discussed with me in the past, so I think that this is capturing his intent, is to take a look at the .75 mil legacy plan for the park district.
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
Were there two or more suggestions in regards to the county manager's recommendation?
No, I thought we were moving on to the next.
No, let's finish. Let's finish the two or more, and then we'll move to the other one.
That's it for two.
That's it.
Right there. I'm sorry.
Pardon?
That's it.
That's
We
it
are
for
done
two.
with the two.
There are none?
Two or more. There's nothing left.
No more.
That's why we were going to
Nothing
the
on
next
parks?
Yeah.
Nothing on
No,
libraries?
No, I thought we were heading to the taxing
Correct.
districts, and you just wanted to do parks first. I apologize.
Well, let's continue the revisit list.
Okay. That is, we have discussed everything that had two or more commissioners that wanted to revisit it.
Okay, thank you very much. Next item.
The next item is the county taxing district. The plan that we have is similar to last year, which is to have a discussion about the board's intent with regard to the mill levies, which are obviously estimated. And the other part of that is that what we did last year was we published a maximum proposed spending budget at this time, leading into the public hearing. that includes an ad valorem amount. And what we would ask is that we handle it similarly to last year, which is that we go ahead and publish that with a constant mill levy. And there's several reasons for that. The primary two are that we are still waiting for the state to complete their budget, and so that's always something that something could happen that would change our minds about what things we need to pay for with ad valorem. So that's a biggie. Right now, things look fine in Topeka, but because we've moved up a month, we like to do that. I would remind the board that we will get the personal property and state assessed utility in mid-June. Those are a smaller piece of the pie. We think that'll be fine. That doesn't really affect ad valorem. It more affects the mill levy because it's assessed valuation. So that's something just to remind you of. The other piece is that we will need to provide for within our targeted rollback, because the majority of the board has indicated that you would like to target a rollback in the county taxing district of approximately 0.25 mils. And so we'll need to know the status of where we think it's going to change between July or August when we adopt the budget, but the June numbers we get from John Bartlett and the final valuation. So between those two things, what we would request is that we have a discussion about intent and get clear intent from the board, and that we indicate that, but we publish at a constant mill levy so that we can make sure as things progress that we have everything lined up okay, and then that we can hit our targets or come as close to them as we can. As you'll recall, last year there was a school that wasn't turned in, and so it wasn't through the process. I think it was Olathe West maybe, and it was about $16 million assessed valuation. And so last year we rolled back 0.331 mils at the adopted budget, and I think it turned about 0.59 of that went back due to that school and other valuation changes. So we targeted beyond the 0.25 and ended up at about 0.259 in the county, I believe, or 0.26. So our thought is that we discuss each of the taxing districts with and get your intent, but then we go ahead and publish that intent, but then do a maximum at a constant mill levy, and then as we progress and make sure everything's okay, we'll adjust that in August when we adopt. And last year, that's what we did, but we made sure that the community and the media and everything knew what our intent was, and that part went fine last year that way. So that's where we were coming from and hoping to talk about mill levies now for the taxing districts.
Well, if that procedure works, again, I made my comments during the budget presentations. I want us to focus on a $0.25 mil reduction in the general fund and more modest reductions in both parks and library. I think I mentioned the fact that to look at the amount of revenue that's coming in above their estimates on their 5-year programs, take a portion of that in each case and reduce it maybe no more than 0.015 or something like that. So that would be my suggestion. Other comments? Jim.
I would agree with the budget director. I think we probably do need to put some flexibility. The oral arguments before the Supreme Court on school funding, I don't know, it doesn't appear to look very favorable to me, and if they have to find additional money in a special session, how that would affect the county, I don't know. But I think to have some flexibility in there, if something happens, that at least we have some chance to react.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I at least in part agree with your perspective. I would say that as assessed values increase, we should do as much as possible to offset that with a mill levy reduction. So I would be fine with what you're suggesting, but I would say we should go as far as we possibly can and not just arbitrarily set it at 0.015 or I noticed here for parks, it was at .02. I don't know if there's a different thought process there, but
No, I think, I don't know, my thoughts were focused on the fact that if your revenues went up 300,000 more than you estimated, at least half of that should go back. So maybe more.
all of it, as far as I'm concerned.
I see.
But
Okay.
we can disagree, we can agree to disagree.
Mr. Claycott.
Mr. Chairman, I think as I've stated before and will continue to state, if there's the thing that I'm concerned with, and obviously being one of the board members on the Parks and Rec, we've given them a real heavy mandate to go ahead and get parks opened up, and they're doing it at a rapid pace, even to the point that we can't keep track of the ribbon cuttings, as I noted this morning. I understand what we're trying to do, and basically, if they're going to recognize the increase, the growth increase that the rest of the county is, and they're going to be able, them and the libraries will be able to protect that, we're only touching into the excess projected level. I'm okay with that up to this point. It's going to cause their mill levy to come down, but in future years, times could change. And what concerns me is that if we recognize that their mill levy is going to be floating a little bit more than normal, just so we protect the plans, the master plan of the libraries and the legacy plans of what we've committed to the residents, the legacy plan with the Parks and Recreation. So that's my concern with mess around here with the mill levy for the parks and libraries. But if there's a commitment from the board that we're going to continue to meet the obligation of the two plans, I can understand a little bit of give and take that we need to do.
Yeah, okay, good comment. Other comments? Well, do we need a motion on this?
You know, I think that the county motion is a little different than the park and the library one. I think what we're proposing is that you direct us to publish with a constant mill levy target and make provision to have a .25 rollback when we do the published budget. So,
Well, I don't disagree with that, except I would like a indication that similar consideration will be given to parks and libraries.
yeah, I was just going to say we could do a park and library motion, which would be, it just would be a long motion to get all that into one. I don't see Don Jarrett here, but I think what you could say, if you want to do one big motion, is to direct staff to publish all three taxing districts at a constant mill levy, targeting the county taxing district to roll back 0.25 mils plus projected changes in the valuation, and then with the park and library district to roll back approximately 0.02 mils for park and rec and 0.015 for library, representing a portion of their excess growth in their 0.75 mils.
Mr. Chairman, can we separate that from general government and then separate the parks and library?
That's fine, I don't have a problem with that.
So if we did county first, it would be that you direct...
Again, this is a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners for consideration on the 14th, is
Yes.
that right, of June? So if there needs to be modifications, it could be done at that time, but this would give the staff direction. So let's have a motion on the quarter mill.
It's for publishing purposes.
Yes.
The purpose of the June 14 meeting would be, right.
Of the
Yes,
Right,
the
it's
max.
Not the final decision.
Right, and I apologize for that. That's an excellent point. This is to publish, which becomes our maximum expenditure budget, and it includes an ad valorem number. So this is the maximum budget, and that's a maximum by fund. And so this would be for the county taxing districts and the budgeted funds therein.
Okay. All right, so the motion would be to recommend to the Board of Commissioners the the general fund budget that's been recommended and with the additions today, and that focus on a quarter mill levy reduction. Is that right?
With provision for a quarter mill. We
Right.
would publish at a constant with provision for a quarter.
Make that as a motion.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any questions on the motion? All right, any discussion? Clerk, call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka?
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
Yes.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
Chairman Eilert?
Aye. Motion carried. Now, do we need separate motions from your perspective on parks and library?
I don't think so, because it's direction and it's the same formula.
Pardon?
And so similarly, it would be to provide direction to publish or to do the maximum budget setting with an estimated constant mill levy for both the park and library taxing district, and make provision for a rollback of approximately .02 mils for the park district and .015 mils for the library.
Okay.
So moved.
Motion has been made. Do I hear a second? All right.
Second.
We do have a second. Questions or discussion? All right, there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Aye.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka?
No.
Commissioner Osterhaus?
No.
Commissioner Ashcraft?
No.
Commissioner Brown?
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert?
Aye. What votes do we have?
4-3.
4-3 for passage?
Yes.
Okay, so noted. Anything else that we need to take up at this time?
I just would turn your attention to the remainder of the next steps, which is just a reminder. We've discussed June 14th a number of times, and then the public hearing will follow that. And that's the connection there is the maximum expenditure budget has a lead time before the public hearing, which has a lead time before the budget adoption. We also have the fire districts in between there. So I think, Penny, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I just wanted to, again, thank you for the time commitment through this month of May to be able to get into the level of detail that we did, a little bit more than previous years. And unless you have other questions, we're done with what we had planned for the agenda for today.
Okay, any finishing questions?
I want to make one final comment. If this goes through on these targeted cuts, the .26, and this would be .3, so it'd be .56 mils. If a mill,
No, there's,
for over a 2-year period, I'm talking last year and this year's.
Okay.
So .56, just to show the incremental value of that, if a full mill is assessed in a county at $10 million, that's $5,600,000 potentially a year over a 10-year period of time. That's reducing spending by $56 million. So when you take it in that contents, these are fairly big numbers. So just to let that know, that's true cuts that are being made, even though the county's growing still 8,000 people a year, frankly, with more human service needs. So
Thank you for that summary, Vice Chairman. And then also, Chairman, we wanted to remind you to, if you are done with deliberations, we could cancel the meeting tomorrow.
Well, yes, but just a reminder, so the recommendations we made today will come to the board on June 14, and at that time, we'll make a final decision as regards to a published budget, and the public hearing would be held on July 30, is that right? And so following that public hearing, there would be final budget determinations made. And so as a result of our action today, our meeting tomorrow is canceled. And so we are concluded. Have a nice weekend, everybody. Thank you.
good job, 12 o'clock.